Well, we've got the Riverdale quiz is ready to rock and roll.
I don't think that works quite as well without me, because then it's Alan and Hope that wrote the quiz and Rich.
I mean, I like those odds.
Yeah.
Winning by default is still winning.
That's right. You could put together a win streak if we go ahead and do it next week without Pat.
It is a kind of victory.
It is the only victory I know.
And welcome to another episode of Even More Mashed Up, the podcast featuring two professors talking about all things pop culture. I am Patrick.
Hey, and I am Alan. And you know what they say? That before the dawn comes the dark night.
Ugh.
I told you I didn't have anything to work with. It's no Miranda rights.
To repeat, it was the best of the options we had.
Yeah, the only idea I had was instead of saying I am Patrick, it would be like I am Vengeance, but in the Batman voice. But
Hope says she has a great Batman voice, the Pattinson Batman. So
I was gonna say it wasn't the Christian Bale voice. That one sounds painful to do.
No, I think it would be bad for any performer's vocal cords to do that.
Yeah. I think Pattinson said something about like his throat hurting after trying to do the gravelly voice.
Yeah.
So, which if you haven't figured out, we're talking about the Batman.
We are talking about the Batman.
Yes.
Not any Batman, but the Batman.
I
assume that you have some bite-sized fun facts.
I do not.
No fun facts?
All right, good night, folks. That's it.
Because that is what I have given up for Lent.
What?
Have numbers?
Yes, I've given up numbers.
The concept of numbers, so you can't even process most information?
Just in terms of my predilection for, spewing irrelevant numbers on the show. That is what I have given up for Lent.
To say that they're irrelevant is such a wonderful thing to hear.
No. Well, and to hear spewing. Like, to hear the acknowledgement that what you do is spew.
Yep.
Also, I think, very nice. But clearly, it has less to do with Lent, more to do with laziness.
No, it has more to do with that there were literally no numbers I could get on the show that were decent. So,
Really?
I couldn't get anything.
It seems like any superhero, especially the Batman ones, would have a bunch of tracking on them, I would think.
Yeah, but all of that's behind paywalls, so.
Oh. Wait,
So
I thought you found the one that would give it to you for free.
Yeah, no, I couldn't. It didn't have it. I think they must be listening to the show and heard that they were giving away for free, and now they've put it behind the paywall.
Oh, man. Unbelievable.
Or they just didn't have it.
Try to do a good deed. There
was nothing. So I've got no numbers. All I've got are pure, unadulterated thoughts about the Batman.
Oh, that's good, because most of my thoughts are in fact adulterated. So
I would expect so.
So when I went to see the movie, and you may be aware of this, Patrick, the main question I had in the back of my head was, do we really need another Batman movie?
Well, I mean, is this the Batman movie we need or the Batman movie we deserve?
Neither.
Oh, do we have to keep doing that? Like we're never, ever going to escape the need and the deserve stuff.
Yeah.
But so my question to you, Patrick, is,
Alan.
Do we need another The Batman movie?
I mean, this is a question you could have asked for how many movies passed as well. Like, this is not the first time this question has come up.
Need is a question. I mean, you could say that about pretty much so many of the superhero things. Do we need another MCU movie? Do we need another,
But
DC?
at least they're different.
We need another, that
exactly. But
it feels like
you're dodging the question.
It feels like you're just trying to set up another. We're reaching post-peak superhero.
No, I think we can peak Batman. Like, look at the title of the movie. It is not, how many the Batman names exist, for film titles?
Well, this is the only one.
Clearly the end. Once
because now you can have The Batman Returns.
The Batman Rises.
How about these? You could do These Batmen.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, they haven't done Batman. That's one they could do.
Batwomen.
So.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of do we need another Batman? Probably not. But you know, I enjoyed the film.
Of course you did.
I thought you know there were some things that it did that sort of harkened back to a kind of Batman that I don't know that we've really seen as much on the silver screen.
Okay.
But it also seemed like a lot of the movie was kind of moving Batman and his characterization from point A to point B. And so in some ways, I'm kind of interested more in seeing what happens next.
Which, is that okay for a film to kind of almost sort of spend its time setting up the next movie?
Well, I mean, if you're trying to start a franchise, then definitely, yes, it is good to set up.
Is DC doing that? Because they keep changing who Batman is. They keep changing it again and again.
I'm kind of, I hate to say this, I'm a little bit with Rich on this one. Like, I'm not even sure what they were really setting up for the second one, you know, beyond, I guess, the Joker.
You know, the Joker, the Penguin, you know... Maybe the Riddler again as like a sidekick or something.
Yeah.
Again, nothing we haven't seen already.
I think it's more in terms of that, you know, in terms of Batman's characterization, he went from being sort of the Dark Knight of Vengeance kind of figure that he was at the beginning of the film, and at the end kind of realizing that I think he says at some point that he needs to be something more and sort of being more Batman, the hero detective. And so kind of that, you know, that Batman, the detective hero, I think is something I'd be interested to see, you know, largely because for me, it harkens back to like the Batman of the 1970s and kind of the early to mid 1980s, which is sort of my Batman, but is also an era of Batman that kind of gets skipped over in terms of representation in film because everyone kind of focuses on a version of the Batman that's very much post Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah, there's so much in there that I'm not sure I completely agree with, that I've lost track of it because I should have been taking notes as you were going. I'm not convinced.
Like
I know he claims he's.
Yeah.
I know he says he's changed at the end, and then he's like, well, yeah, but I'm going to have to like really get bloody and violent moving forward to deal with like all the worst that's coming. Like, you're kind of, and then secondly, the second thing I wanted to comment on, Patrick, was the idea that he was finally going to be a detective, which would be great since the Riddler is obviously a way better detective.
Yes, well, that was another thing that I liked.
This entire
film. This is a Batman who's not like the best at everything. This is a Batman that actually gets outthought by.
And I'll admit, I did kind of like. I kind of was. That was a neat idea that this was a Batman who, to a point, like didn't have like cameras all over the city. You know, he didn't have a network. He wasn't as smart, but he also doesn't seem that smart at the end either. Like, again, I think what Alan's going to say is that like he says he's going to change, but is he has he? And will he? Yeah. Like, are we really going to see the Batman of hope? Or are we really going to see, you know, a better detective? I'm kind of skeptical. How many kids he stares at, you know, is he really the hopeful Batman?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Oh no. Like it was like him staring at the kid.
Yeah.
Was like Frodo staring into the sky in the director's cut for the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Like at some point you're like, you know, we could have saved 15 minutes on this film, which by the way, ran entirely too long.
Yeah. It again, just like we talked about the past ones, another 2 hours? Yeah.
Just because you can make a 3-hour film doesn't mean you should make a 3-hour film. It was 3 hours.
Oh, yeah, it didn't feel like 3 hours to me. I have to say, I did not have issues with the length and pacing.
I did. Well,
I've got some comments about that. Go ahead, Rich.
Well, I was saying it felt very long. I don't know if I was ever really bored, though. Looking back, there was definitely stuff that you could cut, and I don't know how much would change.
Yeah, I think that's I tend to agree with that. I didn't feel bored, but I didn't feel like the film justified its length is how I would describe it. And let me say, to me, I went in thinking I don't really need another Batman movie. Mm-hmm. But I thought the first 5 or 10 minutes of this film were really strikingly good.
Oh, really? I thought that would be the part you would hate.
No, to me, what really distinguishes this as better than other Batman or Batman films is really kind of the visual aesthetic of the film. The way in which it kind of opens and it drops you into kind of an urban environment that you kind of feel, I think, as you're sitting in the theater, kind of a gritty 70s New York City kind of setting. There was this, I for a moment, I thought, well, this is different. It felt aesthetically different. I'm not sure it sustained that.
I mean, it's
bloated 3-hour runtime.
Yeah, like when you go to the club. I said when you would go to the club and stuff, it seemed to get back into that. Like when they'd go to certain locations and it rained all the time. There would be times where it felt like
is Gotham Seattle? is one thing I was kind of wondering.
No, it's New York.
No, but
okay, because it felt like Seattle because it was constantly raining.
And that was clearly the film's comment on climate change.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
One of the very many woke dimensions of the show that people have not liked.
Oh, I've got some woke fair or foul. But so I've got like a rather long idea about the film. So let me just try to toss it at you, Patrick, and you can tear it apart as you see fit.
Hang on, I'm gonna take notes because you said this was long.
Yeah. So my high hopes at the start were sustained by two things. I loved the way the film looked and felt. I thought it was a really powerfully made film at the beginning in that way. I also appreciated the way in which at the beginning...
Powerfully made. Got it.
Okay. At the beginning, Batman is kind of narrating about the power of fear and vengeance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it kind of ends with him saving the subway rider from a gang of jokers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
But after he has done this, right? The terrified victim looks up at Batman after he's been saved and he pleads with the Batman, please don't hurt me. So to the subway rider, the gang and Batman are kind of indistinguishable.
Correct.
And I really like the idea of a Gotham City which the hero terrifies the civilians just as much as he does the bad guys.
And justifiably so. Like, it isn't like Spider-Man or something where, like, somebody makes a news article and everybody hates him. Like, no, there's no reason you shouldn't be terrified of Batman.
Exactly. And because, like, Batman is kind of a bad guy, too. And this is where Patrick is probably going to get off the train with me. But he is. He uses extra legal violence to police the city and kind of impose his order upon it. And so if I were a citizen and there were a Batman running around, I think he would terrify me.
Because how could you trust him? Like, yes.
Right. And
like,
so
from Batman's point of view, it's like, oh, he's getting criminals. But from your point of view as a citizen, he's just attacking people who may or may not be criminals. There's no trial.
Yeah. And here, Patrick, I want to stretch, and you can tell me that I'm crazy. But as Batman narrates the film throughout, he sounds a lot like, well, who does he sound like as he narrates the film to you? Did he like remind you of any other comic book film or character?
Oh, you're going to say Rorschach, aren't you?
Yeah, for sure, right? Because not only is he keeping kind of this semi-psychotic journal of his daily exploits, but it has kind of a dark Rorschach kind of feel to it, don't you think?
Not really, but part of that is I read a review that made a lot of the comparison to Rorschach, and so before seeing the film. And so when I went in and saw the film and listened to the first monologue, though I can see where it's coming from, I think it's a bit of a stretch to say that, that this Batman is basically a version of Rorschach. which is what the reviewer was saying.
I kind of agree with Alan though. At this point, it feels like Batman hates the city too, or not. See,
I didn't get that. It wasn't the Rorschach. They're going to call for me to help, and I'm going to say no. Like what he said was not anything remotely like that.
No, it's like the Rorschach kind of, the city is a bloated dead dog, whose extended stomach has ruptured on the streets.
Yeah, I didn't even see it as
that. The way in which he presented it. So to me, it was a really kind of, and I didn't read that beforehand. Like I just went in the theater not knowing that Batman was going to do one of these goofy voiceovers for the entire film, which is, I'm not a huge fan of that kind of filmmaking, but fair enough. But to me, that reference or kind of gesturing in that way kind of, again, is this reminder that the kind of people who become superheroes probably aren't as praiseworthy as we pretend them, to likely be.
Well, yeah, you've got to be a little bit messed up in the head to think that dressing up as a giant bat and fighting crime is a good idea.
Yeah, agreed. And there's a second scene. Now, if you thought that was a stretch, Patrick, you're gonna lose your mind because obviously I think you have a more positive view of the film than I did. But there's that really terrible car chase with Penguin.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was
where he kind of, Penguin flips the car over and over and over again, and he ends up upside down on the highway, right?
Yep.
And Batman gets out of his car and is walking towards him, and you can see the terror in Penguin's face.
Mm-hmm.
To me, this, whenever you see this in the movie, the good guy and the bad guy are always reversed. It's the good guy who's trapped in the car, kind of watching from this upside down point of view as the bad guy comes at him and you see the terror. Like you see it in Marvel movies done the other way all the time. So again and again, I saw the film early on and then repeatedly kind of trying to get us questioning just how good superheroes actually are. With me so far, do you think it's fair to say that Matt Reeves is partly trying to ask questions in this film about superheroes?
I don't think he is, because I think all of that is the point A that Batman starts at in the film. All of which is meant to serve the point of when he eventually moves towards a point B in terms of the idea of that's not what he's going to be, which we can argue about whether or not, that's possible or if Batman can be redeemed in that way. But I think that is what I think the film is going for, is that kind of Dark Knight, vengeful, the kind of figure that at the beginning of the film scares kind of the general Gotham citizen, whereas at the end is one that seeks to rescue, and I don't know if inspire is quite the right word, but not just be this figure that
I think it is.
Because again, I think have him with the flare, being the beacon of light.
That's what I think Reeves. So I don't think it's an interrogation of superhero so much as I just see it as maybe an interrogation of the Batman that we've had for so long, and Reeves wanting to do something different.
But where you're going demonstrates that he's not doing anything different, I think, because I agree with your A to B comparison. That the Riddler believes that he's working with Batman actually kind of makes sense. The idea that they rely on fear and focused violence makes sense. So I think it's an interesting way to think about kind of the complexity of Batman. But it's the B part of your argument, Patrick, that is the part that just really unsettled me watching this film. So just real quickly, let me walk through it, and then you can explain why I shouldn't be thinking about superheroes this way. The film ends with the mayor's speech at the end about needing to reclaim faith in the system and in politicians and in each other. And that's all nicely said and probably true about where we are. But I don't buy Batman's narration at the end when he says we don't need vengeance, but we need hope. And then he's leading people through flooded, streets with a red flare, or he's evacuating an injured kid at the end. like there's this sense that he's something different, but the Penguin is rising. The Joker is in jail. They're talking about the bloody violence that's coming. And I think the film wants to give us a happy ending. This allegedly happy ending that undermines what the film might have done in really thinking about and interrogating superheroes. Like, is Batman really going to learn his lesson? I don't think so. He's not going to learn his lesson any more than Americans have learned the lesson about vigilante justice outside of the law, both at home and abroad. Like, Americans inherently see violence as a solution. And so this idea that Batman... What?
That's not the solution.
No, violence is not the solution. This is the position to which I will state myself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. It is. Growing up in America, it's hard to hear that. But this idea, like, so the A to B arc, which I don't buy, again, does for Batman what really disturbs me about superheroes and got me really thinking about superheroes. Kind of, again, trying to create a happy ending, trying to create a cover that makes kind of the violence okay, which got me, like, I had an existential crisis as I left the theater. What if, and just bear with me, Patrick, because I know you may never do a podcast with me after I say this out loud.
I don't think you can say what if about a DC show. I'm pretty sure Marvel has that trademark.
Okay, see. What if superheroes in our contemporary age are a pathology? What if superheroes are a sign of a cultural sickness, of a sign of a society in trouble? What if they represent, in fact, what's wrong with us instead of what makes us right and good and righteous in the world?
Yep.
That's all I'm going to get from you? Is that a yep of, like, resignation that, like, you're not going to do a show with me anymore?
Yeah, I was like, yep, this is the last show.
I don't know that that's an entire. I mean, again, kind of the idea that superheroes have always been sort of a male power fantasy. I mean, even kind of going back to Watchmen, which we referenced earlier, there's always been sort of this, since Watchmen in some ways, this indictment of the superhero as pathological and sort of our worshiping of superhero as a kind of pathology. So I don't necessarily disagree with that.
Yeah. And so I left, and maybe you're right. Maybe that Matt Reeves isn't trying to ask any hard questions. He's just trying to tell the classic superhero story. I thought, given the aesthetic at the beginning of the film and the way that it entered, that he did want to kind of raise those questions. And I thought that in the end, like you're trapped by the source material.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
There is no way out of that.
Yeah, there wasn't. Yeah, I mean, I just saw it more as, in my head, I just saw it more as Reeves, I think, trying to distinguish his Batman from the other Batmans.
There's so many other Batmen
that we've had on the screen, because they've all been in kind of that very sort of or maybe just to distinguish it from the Nolan. Maybe it's really the Nolan that he's kind of, I think, distinguishing, which is very much in kind of that Dark Knight. Batman can do no wrong. We can trust him because he's Batman, sort of thing.
But I guess film also say that we should trust him because he's Batman. I mean, Jim Gordon does.
Well, but I mean, that's Jim Gordon does,
and every other character in the movie says, "No, don't trust this crazy man who's shown up in a little bat suit that we don't know who he is."
No, the problem is right there, Rich. The problem is they're right, but the audience is wrong. I think the audience still sees Batman as right.
Oh yeah, because the movie basically tells us, "Hey, he's crazy, but he ends up being right about it, so he must be good." Because he's the
Batman, which I know is what I've said way too much about The Dark Knight. But the film, it left me cold that way. It left me. Maybe he was trying to do something new, Patrick, but I don't see it as new at all. Like, whatever distinction he's making, he's missed the important distinctions to make.
Well, I don't. Yeah,
like maybe the next Batman will wear like a rainbow colored suit, and he'll be like he'll smile a lot, and he'll be really happy and cheerful and hopeful. But I don't buy that coming. Honestly, I just don't.
No, I don't necessarily see that either. I think I had something I was going to say and then I lost it.
Sorry about that. I'm talking too much, but I think it really got me thinking.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know that Reeves is doing anything new either. The only thing that I see him doing as quote unquote new, is new only in the sense that the Batman as detective is not really a version of Batman we've seen in previous films. In previous films, there's been really no detective qualities to him. It's been all just technology.
Well, you're an expert in detective narratives, right? Did you find this to be a compelling detective story?
I don't know. Compelling. I think part of the point
I don't know if it's a story.
This is not Batman the Master Detective. This is still, as you pointed out, Batman gets hoodwinked by the Riddler and the at least the
Riddler
first
knows
riddle.
Everything.
The first riddle when he gets the letter that says drive. The moment that popped up, I'm like, oh, it's a thumb drive because they cut off the guy's thumb. And then 5 minutes later, Batman came to the same conclusion. So I even beat Batman on that one.
What, did he come to that conclusion, or did he just not tell Jim? Was he like, oh, I knew this, but because he never talks to anybody about anything. So it's like maybe he knew this all the time.
Yeah, no, but he opens up the thumbprint scanner, and that's when Jim realizes it. So Batman's ahead of Jim, but behind.
But we don't know when.
Can we just acknowledge that the Riddler's riddles were not particularly difficult to solve? It's almost like he knew Batman was a dunce.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's more, this is not a Riddler who doesn't want Batman to figure him out. He wants Batman in some ways to figure him out, I think.
Well, no, he wants Batman to solve the riddle because Batman can't put together the very simple story of corruption that exists within the city.
I love the whole El Rato thing, the rat with wings. It's like, it's a bat.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, the movie's going to be like, no, Batman doesn't know that until the last possible second. It's going to think of everything but a bat until then.
No, but it's also apparently a pigeon and a falcon, which...
A pigeon, a falcon, a penguin.
Yeah, which, I'm pretty sure in terms of referring to things as a rat with wings, I'm pretty sure I've heard that about pigeons.
Yes. That's obviously
about bats. I've never heard that about falcons or penguins. Like that was a weird thing. So,
in a weird film, yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, it's it's not a compelling detective narrative because we don't actually have a compelling detective because Batman is still very. I mean, I think this is only taking place like a year into him being Batman, so he's still very new.
I think at one point it said it was 2 years, but I think it's still the same idea.
It's 1 or 2, yeah. I can't remember exactly what it was.
It's 1 to 2, yeah.
So this is still a very new Batman.
Yeah, and like Alfred's not like the ex-spy or whatever that's going to help him out a bunch, like so he doesn't have anyone around him who would be the detective to help him as well either.
Yeah, I think he needs to get into a correspondence class or something, like just Detective 101 kind of stuff. I feel like he
needs some experience.
He's got a long
maybe he should join the GCPD.
That'd be wonder. Yeah. It'd be terrible. But it's I mean again, I liked the way in which we got a somewhat different Batman than we've had on screen before. I don't know that it's necessarily going to change anything.
I don't know. I think it'll
regarding how.
Yeah, I thought Bruce was more different than Batman in this film. But anyway, what other observations do you have, Patrick? Because I've kind of set the stage.
Well, I've observed that I didn't really feel like there was very much of Bruce in the film. I thought kind of Pattinson's Bruce Wayne is a bit of a cipher, which can work because, you know, in the comics for the longest time, you know, Bruce is the costume, Batman's who he really is.
Well, and I did kind of like that too, because like you didn't have him like be the playboy kind of person. You know, he looked like somebody who like to a point didn't know what he was doing, kind of like, again, he's not a good detective, but he's like, for whatever reason, he's like, I'm going to be this Batman person and help people. And all I really know how to do is punch people a lot, kind of, and like spy on them. So I kind of like that.
Yeah, you know,
like not being the.
You know who he kind of reminded me of? Although this is gonna, I got to say some nice things because Patrick's going to be upset with me.
Why would I be upset?
But he was like the Kylo Ren of Batman.
Oh, interesting. How so exactly?
He's like the young, handsome, brooding, angsty barista anti-hero. That's how I would describe it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's a very kind of emo vibe
in
about
fact, I'm glad you brought that. I'm glad you brought that up because one of my fair or foul, let me look it up real quickly here, was from Josh Spiegel of slashfilm.com.
Okay.
Who said that this was an emo Batman for an emo world. So your emo comparison is certainly one that was not unique to yourself.
Except that I don't know that Batman is emo so much as Bruce Wayne is emo.
Oh, I think if you read the article, he would say that it's really Bruce that's more the emo.
Yeah, I mean,
although some of Batman's relationship with Catwoman is a little emo, I think you could say.
Well, again, I think that emo world makes sense because I think a lot of people in the world of Batman, you know, could be emo.
Yeah,
in that sense.
Would you make the argument that some of Batman's relationship with Catwoman is emo, or casts him in an emo kind of shadow?
See, this is where we could really use Hope because she could tell us what exactly emo means.
Yeah, emo is a difficult. Well,
we have listen to My Chemical Romance. I know what emo is.
Okay, so could you give us a quick definition?
No, it's something you just know and feel. It can't be defined.
That's what
man.
I feel. Well, I think emo is really about the feeling for sure, right?
I mean, I can also just Google it. It's a style of rock music resembling punk, but have more count. That doesn't mean anything.
That doesn't help at all. No, I mean it's more about
emotional subjects.
His look as Bruce Wayne is very emo with like the hair hanging down in front of his eyes.
Especially how many times he has actual eyeliner, like, you know, kind of dripping off of his face when he takes the mask off.
Well, his vulnerability, I think, has kind of an emo quality to it. You know, the way he's kind of soft with Catwoman has an emo kind of vibe to it. I don't know.
I mean, I kind of like
anyway when you said emo,
just because he was different, you know, in that sense. Like he was somebody who wasn't comfortable as Bruce Wayne. It seemed like in the world, like when he goes to the funeral, like he doesn't seem like he's really happy to be there. Like as Bruce.
Well, he's only there because it's the next place to go in the case. He's not there because he cares about the funeral. He's there. Yeah.
What I'm saying is he's not even happy doing that as Bruce.
Yeah.
Like I think he wants any excuse to have the suit on.
Yeah. Well, that
strikes me as very.
That's a fairly standard.
Isn't
Batman.
that very much? Yeah, I was going to say kind of end of the road Christopher Nolan Batman too, you know, where he's just holed up in
felt that more.
Well, that's like really, I mean, that's the Batman that's existed since Dark Knight Returns, which is that, as I said earlier, Bruce Wayne is the costume, Batman is the real person.
Sure.
It's the conduct of Superman and Clark Kent.
Yeah, I think
they said that in the movie though, but like if you read the comic books, you just like it's not like that's a revelation, I guess.
Well, I guess because he doesn't have the playboy aspect to him, it felt more like you know, when you see like the Christopher Nolan, like he still goes out times to party and stuff, you know, and it's like nobody's really making him, you know, even Alfred has to beg him to go see an accountant for whatever business thing, like
Which we get a scene like that in the Nolan Batman as well. There's a scene where the Michael Caine Alfred tells him, you know, you have to live up to your family's legacy. You can't just squander it and whatnot. So that was a beat we've seen before as well.
I guess if we have two more movies and we see him be more of the playboy, it would be
We've just seen this done so often. I think that you get kind of trapped by the material. But this is something I thought it did well because it's been done so often. It was nice not watching the whole Bruce Batman origin story play out on screen.
We didn't see his parents die. Oh man,
yeah.
Didn't get the origin.
No, and I thought that was a really smart choice.
Yes,
by Matt Reeves. Like we've seen it a gazillion times. We all know why he is the Batman.
Yeah.
In many ways, I appreciated that the film started in year 2 and didn't make me do another Batman Begins, which is not my favorite Batman film of all times. And we don't need to see, his parents getting murdered again.
I was so worried that the Riddler,
the story. So
yeah. I was so worried the Riddler was going to reveal, like, oh, I killed your parents, and then flashback to that happening, like, near the end of the movie. And I was like, oh, no, please don't.
No, that would have been bad.
Yeah.
So, it does make you wonder, of course, how he learned to fight, et cetera, et cetera.
I think Alfred implies
I just hope, like, the next one better not be the Batman 2 better not be a prequel. Like, you could figure out a way to do that in flashbacks, but if it's a prequel, I'm telling you right now, I'm out.
Yeah.
No, they talked about. They've talked about possibly the two things that keep coming up in terms of a sequel are either doing some version of the Hush storyline, though I think that presents some issues in terms of this film, or doing something with the Court of Owls, which I think could be interesting. Those are the two things that seem to be.
Yeah.
Because, the other thing that I find interesting is, the version of Riddler in this film is kind of a mashup of Riddler and Hush.
Interesting. Yeah.
Because particularly when they mentioned the reporter that was investigating Wayne that was named Elliot.
That's not the Riddler, right?
That's the last name of the family Hush comes from. He's Tommy Elliot, and the Elliots were friends of the Wayne family. So I was expecting, particularly when they mentioned that Riddler in the film was an orphan, I was expecting them to reveal that Riddler was not actually Riddler, he's Hush, because that's Tommy Elliot, the son of the reporter that Falcone killed for Bruce Wayne, or Thomas Wayne.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because there's a great deal of Hush already in this version of the Riddler. Yeah. So it would be because it's also weird that they would have Hush and having already mentioned the Elliot name, like it seems like that would be kind of a mess to do. It seems like they've already done Hush in a way.
Yeah. Well, look, as long as it's not a prequel.
No, I don't think they're talking about a prequel.
I guess I could live with it.
Yeah, they're talking about the two things that they seem to be well, and then I guess the teaser with the website in the post credits scene, which I'll put in quotation marks. There's apparently a hint of Two-Face.
See, now is I going to just have Joker and Two-Face in the next film?
I don't know.
Right. Like I feel like they're going to have
quick
Joker.
Question as we're talking about these like similarities in like the Batman canon. Question for Patrick: is the fight scene in a club like a Batman trope that I don't know about?
I don't believe so.
Because it's so reminiscent of The Dark Knight.
Yeah, especially when they do the gunfight, the gunfire in like the dark hallway.
There's a club fight in Dark Knight.
Yeah,
there is.
It's right before he tortures Maroni and drops him from the roof. He confronts Maroni in a club, and he walks through a bunch of thugs, and he beats the snot out of all of them.
Oh, okay.
And he takes Maroni to the roof.
I mean, I could see that being a thing. Like Batman seems to. I could see like the being, especially if it's like New York, sort of like. There's got to be a lot of clubs.
I'm just wondering if like in the deeper Batman canon, if that's a thing, because it's interesting that it came back.
It's part of Batman canon, I think, in the sense because one of the other things that this film, and they've said very clearly that they were inspired by it, is the Long Halloween, which you can see in the film. I think in the opening monologue, Pattinson's Batman mentions that the first killing is on Halloween. The whole storyline of Thomas Wayne having saved Falcone's life, and thus there being a link between the Waynes and the Falcones, that is from Long Halloween. And and then the kind of quasi partnership between Batman and Catwoman very much runs throughout Long Halloween. But I think I think the Batman fight in the club is more a product of how in the early days of Batman, he's dealing with gangsters. He's dealing with the Maroni and the Falcone crime gangs. Okay. And so they obviously own ice clubs and things like that. So I think and that's one of the things that Long Halloween is very much about is, Gotham moving from a place that's ruled by these gangster families to a Gotham plagued by what eventually becomes Batman's rogue gallery. Basically, Long Halloween is at least partially kind of telling the story of, how the gangsters were basically replaced by Joker and Penguin and Poison Ivy and all of those characters. So I think it's just more a product of, the way in which Batman's early years are conceived is that he was basically dealing with the crime families, that the gangster families that had run Gotham and run Gotham in fairly typical ways for gangsters. So I think that's probably where the whole club thing is coming from.
Okay. It was just a curiosity that they were in the two, most recent trilogies struck me.
Yeah. Well, but again, in both cases, I think the mob boss is Maroni in Dark Knight, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the same thing. Is that basically we're dealing with the two main gangster families in the Batman mythos, and they never do anything that gangsters don't do. They're into just all kinds of vice, including gambling dens and clubs and things like that. So I think it's probably just a product of that.
Here I do have one more major complaint about the film. I do not love a bulletproof Batman.
Yeah, it was.
He's almost weird. So indestructible in this film that he loses some of the human quality that ought to distinguish Batman. I think, like the number of times he gets just outright shot is, I don't know, like it meant.
I did like the idea that the bat emblem on his suit is actually his Batarang.
Yeah, like he clicks in and off.
Sure, and that's metal and that's bulletproof. I did kind of like that.
Yeah, but he gets clever. Shot point blank with a shotgun near the end, and it's like I think there's a crack in the suit. Like that's it.
Yeah, there's an indestructibility to him that I think diminished the story a little bit. There's also like when he gets into that little flying squirrel outfit and he jumps off the building, and then he's like the balloon gets caught on a bridge and he gets thrown across the pavement. There were moments like he kind of limps away and he groans, but it doesn't seem to really affect him. It's like a bad game of D&D. Like the damage is never really like meaningful damage.
Yeah. It's like it was the same idea kind of like Superman, where like they have to like bend over backwards to invent reasons for him to be in trouble. Because he's like, he's bulletproof. It's
right.
Like, well, now they have Kryptonian bullets or whatever.
Kryptonite,
yeah.
Kryptonite is what you're looking for there.
Kryptonian bullets. I
technically wasn't wrong.
I'm pretty sure if someone's making Kryptonian bullets, they're pretty much a serial killer like Batman's, because making bullets out of Kryptonians.
Well, maybe they're just using Kryptonians from that tiny little bottle city. Was that Kandor?
The bottle city of Kandor? Don't do the is that Kandor, like you don't know that it's Kandor. Don't try to pretend that you don't know that it's Kandor and be like, I need Patrick's expertise on this because I don't know what Kandor is. Don't even try to pull that. Oh, is it Kandor? I don't know what the bottle city is called. I guess I'll have to ask my nerdy friend because I'm too cool to know things like that. Don't even try that.
I was just afraid I wasn't going to say it right. That's it. I was just afraid. I was just afraid of the pronunciation. It was the pronunciation that scared me.
Yeah,
and I didn't want to give you a Pyrrhic victory.
Pyrrhic. It's a Pyrrhic victory.
I know. It's a reference to the opening.
Yes, I know. Assuming that's in the opening.
Literally, hopefully that's in the opening. Otherwise, it'd be a.
If that does not make the opening, it will make it less.
Yeah. So did you have any thoughts on Kravitz's Catwoman? We haven't really talked about her. And
she wasn't in the movie that much.
I thought Zoe Kravitz. Well, I thought that when she was on the screen, she was really, really good. I thought
you didn't find her too urban.
Oh no! Is that a fair or foul somewhere?
Oh well, I mean, it's not so much a fair or foul, but there was the.
You're not saying you found her too urban, are you?
No, you didn't see this. So apparently, in an interview,
the thoughts and opinions of the individuals.
No. She auditioned for
not representative of the company as a whole.
No. In an interview recently, she revealed that she actually auditioned for a role in Dark Knight Rises, but was told that she was too urban for it.
Ooh.
Wow.
Now, she said it wasn't Nolan. She said it was like an assistant casting director, an assistant to the assistant, but
still, it was for the same movie.
She's too urban for... It's either got to be Catwoman or the Talia character that Marion Cotillard played. But yeah, that's why I brought that up, is a reference to that interview.
Okay, that makes me feel much better about your reference, actually.
I was like, do I need to start editing this podcast?
I thought Kravitz was great. I thought she was really quite brilliant in this film. I agree with Rich. It's this weird movie, though, where she shows up, she disappears,
and then I thought she was gone.
Really long stretch.
I didn't know she was going to come back.
And then, I knew she had to come back, but and then she's back. It just, to me, I think this would have been better as two films where Catwoman doesn't even show up until the second one. How interesting would a film be that was a relationship that really was a film that focused on the relationship between these two characters? That would be a really interesting film. But because it gets crammed in here with the Penguin and the Riddler, and Falcone and, the mythical Maroni and Gordon and all of these characters that all have to get jam packed in here. There's no room for that relationship to breathe. That would be a great second film.
Yeah, have some cameo. Have her still be the person he follows back to the apartment. But then, the film loses track of her at that point. Then, the next film is like, oh, that's who you were following.
So many ways to do it that I think would make for more interesting. Because honestly, I didn't really buy the relationship between the two of them because I don't think it had enough screen time.
It's too quick.
Well,
I
think there's ways in which there's ways in which I think the film is kind of banking on, everyone knows that there's this relationship, will they, won't they kind of thing between Batman and Catwoman. So we can move to that fairly quickly in the film.
Right. To me, though, it's a missed opportunity. There's a great story to tell because I don't know that it's ever been told all that well. Even in the Nolan movie, I don't think.
I feel like even the Nolan movies sort of bank on the history of people knowing, if you're watching a comic book movie, you at least are aware of the comics, so Catwoman and Batman have a thing. So we're not really going to invest.
I feel like so much has been done with Batman on the big screen, but the Selina Kyle, Bruce Wayne, Catwoman, Batwoman relationship never really has been.
What about Batman Returns? The Michelle Pfeiffer, Michael Keaton one.
Oh, yeah, I guess
that was one where they actually, I think, did a good job of establishing.
Especially because it wasn't the first one; it wasn't his origin story. They had free time.
It's so long ago. I'd literally forgotten about it. But I feel like,
to Rich's point, in this film,
you could tell.
Yeah, in this film, skipping over the origin story makes it more like the second film. So there should have been more time.
Oh yeah, but then they've got so many other villain origin stories. You've got the Riddler, you've got the Penguin.
Yep.
Yeah.
You got Jim Gordon, him becoming commissioner, because I guess when everyone else dies above you.
Well, that's how Gordon always
gets chemistry between the two of them, There's such great chemistry. I just felt like huge missed opportunity.
Yeah. So you would say, quote, at Zoe Isabella Kravitz is the Catwoman of my dreams.
Well, again, I feel like you're saying things that we should probably have as a disclaimer.
Oh, no, that is a direct quote from the Instagram of Taylor Swift.
Oh.
That's
not from your Instagram
honestly,
account?
I think she is my favorite Catwoman. Yeah, really? I think that would be fair to say. Yeah.
She seems more like a person.
Well, maybe Julie Newmar. Julie Newmar might be like the number one, but that would only be because like, you know, my childhood, like my introduction to Cap.
Oh, see, so it's okay for your childhood nostalgia to color your opinions, but my childhood nostalgia is entirely problematic, and I'm not being objective.
Yes.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, you should go listen back to, you know, I can't even think of how many number of shows.
Still sounds like very vague, fake newsy kind of stuff.
Yeah, and yet Rich agreed with me.
I agree with anything anyone says.
Well, you know what that means.
We got rid of that rule because you agreed with Rich earlier on the film being bad, which means then you're all wrong.
We're all wrong. Everybody, you're all wrong.
So, you know, let's think through the ramifications of what you're about to do and how it will completely undermine your point. And you have fallen into my trap, Batman, and I am Riddler.
All this implies that I still have power.
I acknowledged the bias of Julie Newmar from my childhood, but said that Zoe Kravitz was probably my favorite. I think she was really good. And so I know that you're a big fan of like ranking. Where does Robert Pattinson fall on your Batman rankings?
Ooh. Well, he's definitely not number one. His number one is Kevin Conroy from the Batman the Animated Series.
I know you love now talk to us about like the you know, flesh and blood humans on the screen, like the big screen.
So are we
taking Adam West out of it?
Okay, so we're taking Adam West out of it. So we're talking Keaton, Kilmer, Clooney, and Bale.
And Pattinson, yeah.
Yeah, and so, boy.
Right?
Yeah, that's because, you know, they just, you know, they all just kind of, once you get down from Conroy's version, they all just kind of become a muddle for me.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Pattinson's fine. I mean, I really like Michael Keaton. You know, Nolan's version, the problem is Nolan's version kind of became a parody of itself in the end. In terms of like voice and things like that. So it's hard for me, you know, like that just kind of turned into such a parody. So I'd probably put Pattinson, you know, probably definitely above Clooney and Kilmer, probably above Nolan, below Keaton, below Conroy. So solidly.
I think that's a pretty reasonable ranking. And he will have time to either climb or fall too, depending on what the rest of the body of work looks like.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there was nothing. I mean, you know, I enjoyed the film. Unlike other people that you've seen on Twitter and whatnot, I did not find it this massively transcendent or transformational experience. You know, changing all cinema. I mean, it's probably fair to say that it's. I'd probably say
no Joker. You're saying.
It's probably the second best DC Extended Universe film behind Wonder Woman, but that's just because everything else is so bad.
Yeah. I definitely enjoyed this more than
2 comes out.
Yeah.
I'm not sure Aquaman 2 is gonna do it for me. I maybe have slightly more hope for Black Adam, but
right. The Rock is always watchable.
Yeah, except he's playing a completely unlikable character, so.
Right. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what he does with that.
If they do the version from the comics, which if you cast The Rock as Black Adam, you're not doing the version from the comics because he is unlikable, and that is not The Rock. So.
Yeah.
Right. No, agreed. So I have a quick fair or foul lightning session for you.
Oh, I've got another one for you that's kind of long.
Okay. Let's do the lightning.
You want to go first, or shall I go first?
Let me do mine first, because I think you'll have thoughts about this.
All right, it's really long, though?
It's not very long, but there's a lot for you to respond to.
Okay.
So this is from Jonathan Sim at comingsoon.net.
Oh, I might have seen Jonathan Sim.
All right. Quote, ever since Christopher Nolan crafted the universally adored The Dark Knight trilogy, the odds of a Batman film reaching those heights has appeared minuscule. However, Reeves' vision might prove to be a worthy adversary, as he has outdone himself, creating a masterful superhero film that takes every expectation we had and goes above and beyond.
Batman is everything a superhero movie should be.
Yeah, I love that.
Juggles many characters at once through 3 hours of multi-layered crime narrative. Might not be for everybody. It's a mature, unconventional superhero movie filled with everything you would arguably want from a film. Yeah, we might have both found that. First, let's be clear: the Nolan version is not universally acclaimed.
That's the reason I chose this quote. The moment I saw Nolan universally adored, I'm like, oh, Alan will have a response to that.
I think that there are parts of this in terms of the visual aesthetic that make it masterful. But I don't think it's a masterful superhero film. I don't think it goes above and beyond. In fact, I would argue that it remains very much trapped in the Batman canon and what's already been done. So mostly I think that's foul. I don't think it's a particularly mature film as a superhero film, and I don't think it's unconventional. So no, I would say pretty much foul to all of that.
Okay.
As you would have suspected, probably.
Yes, I figured that would be the reaction.
Well, the one I found for you comes at it from the other angle, because I assumed you were going to really like the film. So did you happen to look at
like I said, it didn't change filmmaking or
right.
I like the version of Batman it looks like it's trying to work with, but a lot of that kind of depends on where they go in whatever the next film is.
All right. So given that, for mensxp.com,
okay,
we got an article from a Batman fan, an avowed Batman fan, about 8 reasons why the movie sucks.
Oh, I think I saw this one.
Did you look at all 8 of them? I'm going to run each of them by you, and you could just give me a really quick, fair or foul, and
I looked at them really quickly.
All right. So number 1, the movie sucked because it was the most talkative Batman ever.
That seems ridiculous because he didn't really talk much.
He said, be it when he's with Gordon or the Catwoman or all by himself, he just keeps talking. What if you add in all the stupid voiceover narratives?
I mean, if you could, maybe. But yeah, he was not I did not see him as a very talkative Batman.
All right. So that you disagree. Question number 2.
Yes.
All right. 2, it's cliche beyond belief. Weak plotting, weird relationship with Catwoman, the scene at the end where he deliberately jumps onto the loose electrical cable to save people underneath. He could have just thrown a batarang to solve the problem. He uses the flare. It was too damn cliche from start to finish.
Yeah, I'm not really he's saying that all of those things are cliche, but not explaining why they're cliche. Like, I don't understand why jumping onto the cable... Like, cliche means it's something we've seen a whole bunch of times. I don't think jumping onto the electrical cable is a cliche.
No, but the selflessness of it perhaps is.
Maybe, he doesn't really explain. So I'm going to say foul in that he just seems to be calling things cliche without actually explaining them, so...
So he's 0 for 2.
Yes, 0 for 2.
Number 3, he's the slowest Batman ever. As in being like, he's not talking about mentally slow like we were talking about earlier, being a bad detective, just physically slow. Like when he walks over to the Riddler's apartment, he just kind of walks over to the Riddler's apartment. And he just moves really slowly.
I don't know. The Keaton Batman, particularly in the first film, was very impaired by the suit.
Yeah, like I there's definitely times where Batman takes slower.
Point.
So he's
0 for 3.
I'd say he's he's slow, but it's not exactly anything new. So
all right. So maybe number 4. All right, I'm going to give it a loss then. I'm going to say he's got to get a complete fair or it doesn't count.
Okay.
Number 4. That Pattinson's Batman is the most gullible Batman ever. In the example he gives, is that he takes Falcone at his word, and then he goes, and Alfred just happens to wake up right when he's sitting there, although God knows when he found time to sit next to Alfred's bed in the hospital. Mm-hmm. And then Alfred tells him a different story, and he just automatically believes that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like nobody has
proof. Probably fair, but he's young and impressionable.
Okay, but that's at least one.
Yeah.
But even that one, you're kind of explaining away. You're kind of no prizing it away.
Well, I don't think that's a bug. That's a feature.
Did you ever win a No Prize, by the way, when you were a kid?
No.
It feels like you would have for like a Quasar issue.
Yeah, no, I don't think I ever sent something in for that. But yeah, no, I never won a No Prize.
All right.
I really wish I had though.
Yeah, right. Number 5.
Yeah.
Writes, don't let the movie fool you into believing it's an artistic masterpiece. It's not. And he really complains about the heavy-handed use of music at certain points.
How dare they use music?
I mean, I think it's fair. I mean, there's some nice stuff that the film does, but I don't know that it's a like I said, it wasn't a transcendent film experience for me.
So he's on a roll. He's got 2 in a row. Number 6, the super dumb car chase.
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about like
dumb.
No, that's just it. It's because, Rich, it's an inherently stupid car chase.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I will agree that there were. I mean, the one thing that I found really weird was that, and I only saw the film the one time, so I haven't gone back and see this, but in my head, you know, when he and Gordon pull up to the place where they're going to find Penguin, they both pull up out front. And then when they're leaving, the Batmobile is all of a sudden on the side of the building.
Yeah, cloaked in shadows.
And I don't even remember him driving the Batmobile over there. Like, I was like, did he drive that there? Or was the Batmobile already... It was a weird... It was a weird continuity there. I'm like, what? Hey, you were out front, and now your car's on the side. And also, I didn't think you were in that car, but I don't really remember looking at what car you were driving. But yeah,
I think you're right, Patrick. I think you're right. And the way in which the Batmobile as a character really turns me off. Like there's like an entrance for that.
The Batmobile is not as cool as Reeves thinks it is in this film.
Yeah, it sounds neat. The sound design of it made it sound like real big and bassy, but then you kind of see it's like a dune buggy, sort of.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the
like Batmobile in a Blade Runner sequel kind of way. Yeah.
I mean, really, that design of the Batmobile should be the most recent Ghost Rider's car. That's who should be driving a car like that.
Okay. So I think that's 3. He's 3 up and 3 down. Number 7, Alfred is one-dimensional.
I mean, Alfred doesn't have a lot of time to do much.
Is Alfred not always one-dimensional?
He claims that Alfred has an interesting backstory. Alfred has texture to him.
I mean,
but the other thing too is, you know, he's complaining about like he wants. Yeah, I mean, he's.
But again, even Michael Caine had 3 movies to do that.
Yeah.
Well, Michael Caine had like a story about a guy who was stealing rubies and then like just leaving them with kids to play.
I mean,
some men just want to watch the world burn.
For giving the Circus the role, it felt like there would have been more.
Yeah, there's not a lot of Alfred. I mean, again, I think Alfred is possibly something that suffers because of everything going on in the film.
Yeah, despite it not being an origin film, it still has a lot of setup to do.
Yeah, well, it chooses to do a lot of setup.
Yeah, it doesn't have to.
Yeah. So number 8, this will determine whether he wins or ties. And I think this is a clear, correct call. The motorcycles at the end he describes as an awful bike race, with Batman's cape kind of trailing out behind the bike and like them like zooming up and back and forth with each other. That was awful, right?
With like Catwoman? You mean like at the end?
Yeah, like Catwoman and Batman are like riding off into the sunset.
I don't know why. Yeah, I don't know why that whole scene happened, because it was like, okay, I'm going to leave. All right, and then Batman starts to follow.
It was very cheesy in that the whole point of it is that at some point they're going to turn in different directions. Now that's one of the things that I would say was kind of cheesy and cliche about the film, because the whole time they're writing, they've already said they're going. She's asked him to come with him to Bloodhaven.
Right.
Bloodhaven. He said he's not going, so that when they're driving down that very long road, and like, okay, they're going to turn different directions at some point. And so, it was a very kind of cheesy, cliche.
But like, it was also shot like in the wide, like it wasn't shot like
and it was just a very long bike ride. Like, they didn't need to. It was
It's a classic the same thing with the fight in Madison Square Garden. They don't know how to end a superhero movie anymore. Like the endings have all become so bloated.
Yeah, well, except Endgame. Endgame tied it off nicely.
Moving on.
So, Patrick, you mentioned wokeness earlier.
Yes, I did.
Did you happen to read the review from Outkick by Alejandro Avila?
Yes, I did.
He says it's not a bad movie, but one of the things that'll make you cringe is the underlying politics that jump off the screen.
Yes.
Did you find this is a film that had like politics jumping off the screen at you? Number one.
I mean, I think most Batman movies, to a point, have about corruption and stuff.
Not until the very end, when Riddler and his online,
his Facebook group or whatever.
Yeah, buddies all show up. That the Riddler basically, weaponizes his, online group into basically an insurrection against, Gotham's mayor. So it seemed very, very January 6th or given how they failed, that maybe they're closer to the trucker rally. But there was that. But yeah, that was the moment I was like, oh, okay, so that seems like a gesture towards some of the stuff.
Well, at one point, Catwoman talks about white privilege too.
Yeah, that's the other thing. After reading the Avila piece, I went online trying to see like what are people talking about, and literally it's that line. Like that line is what everyone's basically like. The moment on Twitter, there's a bunch of people like, oh, the moment she said that line, I walked out of the theater. That there was a lot like the one line about white privilege was apparently a step too far.
Yeah, what this writer writes that I thought was so interesting was the following sentence. I've never been a words of affirmation type, but watching Gotham bully Pattinson's Batman made me want to reach out to him and remind him that he's doing a great job.
Huh. I'm assuming that made you throw up in your mouth a little bit.
You could write, hell yeah. Like you could write a book on just that sentence, I think. Like the idea that Gotham is bullying Batman is astounding.
Well, I think it's the idea that I think that because the other thing people complained about was the way in which there's that brief scene at the funeral where the new progressive mayor basically says, hey, and this is what the interpretation online is, hey, let me redistribute your wealth to Gotham because I know how to use your money better than you're using your money. Right. So I think that might be when he's talking. I think it's more that Gotham and in particular the mayor candidate bullies Bruce Wayne into like you need you shouldn't have your money. We should be using it more.
But that he says Batman makes me think too about maybe the way the cops don't like him, or the way in which he's not appreciated, or the extra legal vigilante violence that he inflicts.
Well, but you also get the scene at the end, too, where you get a little bit of propaganda when all the good cops show up to arrest Falcone, and Gordon's like, I'm not the only bad cop or only good cop.
Don't you think that's kind of Reeves wanting to have his cake and eat it, too? He wants to, tell a story of corruption, but doesn't want, police to be besmirched. Like he wants to do so it can be propaganda and the corruption, and it doesn't matter because it's Batman, and we're also overtaken by the spectacle of it all. That who's going to notice well,
I see it more as indicative of how we are stuck in sort of a neoliberal quagmire. I think back to that. What Biden, I guess, I don't know if it was in the maybe it was in the State of the Union or something around there where he said, the solution is not to defund the police, it's to fund the police. And it's basically like that idea of the Democrats can't get away from having to support the police and do something different. That they're no different than Republicans on that. That I think the film is sort of stuck in that same kind of box that,
I think that's fair.
We have to reassure people. Oh no, not all cops are bad.
Right.
Right.
So because we live in a world where, it's dangerous to make any statement that's too broad. And so the Batman does what all the superhero movies do to some extent, even those that kind of want to make a statement of some sort, is they make it, but then they spend the rest of the film kind of modifying and softening and, making the edges less sharp so that by the time you get to the end, you have a film that you can kind of pretend is saying something, but in the end doesn't really manage to do that.
Yeah, that you basically at the not all cops at the end.
Right.
So it's I think they're
like not all white males have of privilege or a problem, right? Because there's Batman too. So
and not all men, or the not all men sort of response to oh God, the Me Too movement. That's what it was.
Like the Me Too movement. Yeah.
Yeah. That you kind of get that same moment where it kind of backs off from a broader critique. So there are moments where the film, could be seen as sort of talking about sort of social justice issues, but not in any way that I think permeates the film as a whole.
Right.
They're just little moments and then like you said, the film does kind of back away from even what might be it's the furthest this goes in terms of just showing how corrupt Gotham is, and thus how corrupt the system is.
And yet so not new in any way to think about Gotham City is corrupt. Well, there's a twist.
Yeah, it's very much that's very much. I mean, the Jim Gordon character is very much in the based on the Frank Miller Year One series, where he's the one good cop amongst the corrupt Gotham police force.
Right. Yep. Agreed. And so in some ways we've come back to where we started with my complaint about the film, is that what it might want to do or purport to do, it does not follow through on.